Hi everybody, and welcome to this tutorial where I'm going to teach you how to make a self-portrait. And well, there are a lot of reasons, and especially when you are a beginner, to start a self-portrait. And this is because your model is always around, isn't it? So that's very handy. And also you would be the judge of your own drawing. And you won't have to show it to any others. And you can make as many studies as you want. Now what you have to keep in mind, that when you see yourself in the mirror, when you are combing your hair or putting on your makeup, or when you're a man, you're shaving, that this is a mirror reflection. So this is always different than how other people see you. And also a face is never symmetrical. And so make sure that you make a selfie, or anyways, print out a picture of yourself. And of course you can watch in the mirror to check some points in your face. But this is how you want to draw. This is how other people see you. Now, what you can do when you are a beginner, and this, for instance, is a pen drawing. This I did just by hand. I was at work and I was just doodling. And then I came up with the idea to reach out a fine tip to get started on drawing your own self-portrait. And there's a very neat trick for it. Maybe you have a graphite bar. If you do not have it, maybe you have these kinds of graphites. There's a big area in which you can start putting in, and this is what I'm going to show you. On the behind of the print you make, you start putting in that graphite. You can also use charcoal if you want, and go all the way and cover all the area. And then you can simply put that on the drawing sheet where you want to draw it, maybe tape it. And then you take an 2H graphite pencil, which is the hardest, and then you start tracing all the shadows, and in that way you will know where the eyes are going to be, the nose, the mouth, the ears, the contours, but try not to draw in too much contour lines, because that flattens your drawing a lot. Now how I do this, I do on a special Lineke Live review on my Patreon page. And what I also want to say is, many of you might say, well, that's cheating. Well, I think it is not cheating, because if you never got your first setup right, then you might get very frustrated. Maybe you're a beginner at portrait drawing, and you never get the eyes right, or long faces, short faces, whatever. You cannot just get that right, and then you might give up on portrait drawing. Now that would be a terrible shame. So that's one of the reasons I do not think it's cheating. And also, you have very little lines. You will see that in the recording I did for you. You will have very little lines to go from. So drawing the portrait itself still is just as hard as it would be without tracing it. And the third point, that is, you will have a lot more time. It's just it will go faster. If you mess it up, just take another trace and start over. And also you can try out many more media, and in this way you can make a lot more studies and you will grow even faster in drawing. So that's my point of view. So let's start drawing. So here we go, people, and as you can see, there's very little to go from. I traced the print with the 2H, and that way I created this blurry print of myself, a reflection. But at least I have the points where my eyes are going to be, the nose, the mouth, the pencils that I'm holding there in my hand. And as you can see, and this is very, very important indeed, is that I have avoided putting in harsh lines. Now what I'm also going to do is to use the blender stick. And you can take a grinding sponge to get some pigments off your graphite pencils, to put that on the blender. And as you can see here, the second pencil gets obvious because I grade in the surrounding of the pencil, for instance. Now drawing with the blender stick is very nice, especially for beginners. And it's also very smart to simply start with graphite pencils to make a first try. Once you've done that, and make several studies please, then you can shift to other material, other drawing material, or even colored paper. But I will also make some tutorials about that. But this is your very, very first way to get acquainted with drawing portraits. And of course, well, using your own face is very nice because you do not have to, get the consent of somebody else, and you will be your own judge. Now you can see how beautiful the blender stick works. I simply look very, very closely to my print, and then by coloring in the surrounding of this first pencil, for instance, it will pop out. And I avoid contour lines all the time. So I do not put any contour lines in the eyes, in the nose, or around the lips. I see that done very often, because once you draw in contour lines, your drawing gets flat immediately. So that's very disturbing. Search for dark and light areas, and in that way your face, your features will pop out, and this is very, very important indeed. Now in this print, it's not the easiest one. I would advise you to make a print of your face that is not as light and dark as this one. Because this is my avatar, I really wanted to use this for this demonstration. But there's a big contrast between light and dark in this print. So I will have to darken in all the right side of the drawing and keep the left side as light as possible, and that is quite hard. My advice to you would be to take a print and make a picture of yourself which is in the middle. So not too light with very little contrast, but also not too dark, because then you, it's just more difficult. But this is a very nice one for this demonstration. And it also has the hand in it. Well, hands are just awful to draw. So I will have to practice that for myself also. I'm always putting that, away. I try to avoid hands at all time because they are very difficult. But I will put pressure on myself to get better at that. But that's a concern for later. Now here you see the left side. I want to draw out my hair, and I simply do that by giving the background a little bit of gray value. So that's the way I make my grayish hair pop out. And I keep watching the print all the time. And the right side will be very difficult indeed, because I have very little to go from. I'm hardly recognizable on the right side of this picture. So I simply will draw what I see. So here I'm putting in a complete gray area over the right side of my face, and then I can blur that in with the blender stick again. So it kind of looks quite odd now, but I have to get that value right. And I could even make it darker and darker, but I didn't want to do that because I still wanted to see a little bit of that right side of my face. And also the shadow that is here just underneath a little bit of hair. You can, oh no, you cannot see that on the left print, but there's a little bit of shadow falling on my forehead. So that's a nice detail too to put in. And as you can see, it's all very, very dark on the right side. And then I take my pencil eraser and I simply draw out some strings of hair to get some hair movements going on. And pencil erasers are very, very nice to have. So I would recommend them to you. Mine is by Koh-i-Noor, and it's a very nice item to have. It's a great tool for drawing out hair and to lighten up areas in the face. As you can see, I put in the letter Stabilo on the lower pencil. It's just a nice detail. And of course you can fool around in your drawing. You can get some attention to something. So I did that with the fourth pencil that was in my hand. But what I also keep notice of is that I want to draw attention to specific areas in my drawing. So the right side should be just dark and in the shadow and not getting too much attention, while my left eye is important and is the most recognizable, but that also creates a very interesting drawing. So I literally draw what I see by watching the lightest and the darkest areas. Now here I'm wearing a black vest, so I draw that in and keep in mind it's just a study, but it's a great start, I think. And I'm not half as good as I want to be, but I sure hope that you will find these tips helpful and that you will give it a go. So, you can also check out my Patreon page, of course, and I wish you all the luck on your art studies. And don't forget to subscribe. I will see you again next Friday.